Hello friends, I was led to bring up this message today, and what we're looking at today is an address from the history of scriptures in Genesis, and the address has to do with the infection of a killing mentality. So we're going to be covering over a few chapters from this history of Genesis in reference to the patriarchs of the 12 sons of Jacob. And what we're looking at here now is a situation, and we're looking at an address of how an idea can infect a group and mislead. So we're going to pull out some key points out of some of these chapters. We're going to move around. We're going to start with Genesis 34, which is the Dinah incident. And the Dinah, daughter of Leah, had been born to Jacob. Went out to see the daughters of the land here in 34:1. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her. Now he was strongly attached to her, his soul, it says, and he loved her and spoke kindly to her. And he spoke to his father, saying, get her to be my wife. Now Jacob had heard of this and his sons, and Jacob held his peace until they came, and they came to speak with Jacob. Now we're going to move kind of along here instead of just reading through everything. We're going to move down here, and they're asking for Dinah's hand in marriage. But it says here in 34:13, but the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father, spoke deceitfully because he had defiled Dinah their sister. Now I want to put a key point that they spoke deceitfully here in 13. And they said, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to the one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us. But on this condition we will consent to you, if you will become as we are, if every male of you is circumcised. And so they used this event of circumcision because they were dealing deceitfully with them. And they used it in that manner to convince them to become circumcised. They agreed. It says in 18, and so they did not delay, and they did this to become circumcised. And as you'll notice here, they're going to unite as a kingdom. Where it says in 34:21, these men are at peace with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for indeed the land is large enough for them. Let us take daughters to us as wives, and let us give them of our daughters. Only this condition, that they consent to dwell with us, to be of one people, if every male is circumcised as they are circumcised. And then they're talking continually more about how they will be one people. However, in 25, it came to pass on a third day, when they were in pain, that the two sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came boldly upon the city and killed all the males. This is what they had done with what God had given as a signet to show circumcision in the flesh. They took this and dealt deceitfully, using this as a means to weaken the people, and then they went and killed them. And they killed Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from his house and went out. And the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their sheep, their oxen, their donkeys, and the city was what was in the field, and all their wealth. They also took their little ones and their wives they took captive, and they plundered even all that was in the houses. We'll pause there for a moment. So they used this incident that had occurred concerning their sister. They dealt deceitfully with the people and used the covenant that God had given of circumcision as a sign, which was for a purpose. Paul had to address this issue in the New Testament as well, where there were religious people who were telling others they had to be physically circumcised to be saved. And Paul addressed the issue in the New Testament and says, no, what they're speaking about, the Lord's provision on this was a circumcision of the heart to turn from the ways of flesh seeking and to seek the better way of the Lord and his purpose for things. And it is a matter of the spirit, not so much the flesh. And so we're showing in this example here, they had taken advantage of this and weakened the people in their flesh so they might attack them and take everything that they had. So we have to question also at what point they gained all this wealth. And they also took captives. So because of this incident, Jacob had to say to them, "You have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants, among the Canaanites and Perizzites. And since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I." But they used the excuse, "Should we treat our sister as a harlot?" So they justified their actions, taking an event and allowing things to mislead them into the wrong direction. Jacob, of course, had the experience to understand that this was going to create serious issues, even the destruction of their people. And they thought to justify it by their comment here in 31. And it was not justified. So they had to leave. So we're going to move over to Genesis 35, which is often known as a point that's brought out here in one of the statements as an oak of weeping. So in Genesis 35, you're going to see that Jacob has to go through a great deal. And he was told by God to go to Bethel and dwell and make an altar there to God who appeared when you fled from the face of Esau, your brother. So Jacob went, he told the people in his household, and these people who had been absorbed, put away all the gods from them, and let us go to Bethel. And so they gave Jacob all the foreign gods which were in their hands, which is 35:4, and the earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree, which is by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were around them, so they did not pursue him to overtake him. They came to Luz that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan, and the people who were with him, he made an altar called El Bethel, because there God had appeared to him when he fled from the face of his brother, as the Lord had instructed him to do. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried below Bethel under the terebinth tree. So the name of it is called Ellen Bechuth, and that is where the Oak of Weeping translation is from. In this case, you got to consider Jacob is going to go through some of this weeping, and Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, Rebekah was, of course, his mother, Jacob's mother. And God had appeared to Jacob again and blessed him. And God had said, "Your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name." So he called his name Israel. And he said he will be giving him, God said, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac I give to you, and to your descendants after you I give this land. And so God went up from that place, and Jacob made another pillar there of stone, poured a drink offering on it, and poured oil on it, and he called the name where God spoke to him Bethel. On the journey, however, from Bethel, and near a little distance from Ephrath, Rachel went into labor. She had hard labor. And down in 35:18 we see, and so it was, as her soul was departing, for she died, and that she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And Jacob put a pillar on her grave. So now Rachel has passed on as well. And Israel journeyed further. And there's a situation with Reuben and Bilhah that goes into the lineage of Jacob's sons, and then ends here with the death of Isaac. Then Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, in Kirjath Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had dwelt. And the days of Isaac were 180 years. So Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, being old and full of days. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So in this chapter of Genesis 35, you see a lot of grief around Jacob and the things that he has to deal with. So in chapter 36, it goes through the lineage of Esau. Now we're moving on to 37 and Joseph. And this is a point that we wanted to bring out here. In 37:2, Joseph was 17 years old And he was feeding the flocks with his brothers, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. He made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. So it shows in this that they had their resentment within themselves. Joseph was only 17 years old. Now, there are people who would say, well, it was because Joseph gave a bad report, and certainly that had its influence, but was it not Joseph's responsibility to report to his father according to what his father asked him to do? Joseph has the dream the Lord had given to him, and because of this dream, they hate him even more. It says in 37:8, they hated him even more. So they're being filled with this hate for their own brother. Comes into this where Joseph was sent. It shows here Jacob had asked in 37:13, are they not feeding the flock in Shechem, which is where they were? I will send you to them. He sends them to see that it is well with them and bring back word to me. So he sent Joseph here in 14 to his brother. Along the way he had met a man who directed him to where he needed to go. And so Joseph went and found them in Dothan. And when he was afar off, before he even came near, in 37:18, they conspired against him to kill him. Kill their teenage brother. And they were grown men. They said, look, this dreamer is coming. So they speak a lot with their words and boastful ways. But they were going to kill him, cast him into a pit in 20, and say some beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. Now those are the dreams that the Lord had given to him. However, Reuben did try to deliver him. When he heard it, he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. His solution, however, wasn't the greatest. And he said, shed no blood, but cast into this pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. That was Reuben's intent. So it came to pass, they grabbed Joseph, they stripped him of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that were on him. You can see that they were incited by jealousy and considering that they had already were infected with this attitude to kill. They cast him into the pit. They sat down to eat. The Ishmaelite company was coming from Gilead, bearing spices, balm, myrrh, on their way down to Egypt. So then Judah steps forward on this one and says to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brothers listened. What a solution from Judah, to sell him for profit. So they sold him and pulled him out. Now it's interesting that Judah says, he is our brother and our flesh. So how is it that he can say he has respect for that, but yet was initially willing to kill him? And only when this incident occurs does he say, what profit is there if we kill him? So instead they sell him. So then when Reuben had returned and Joseph was not in it, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, the lad is no more, and I, where shall I go? And now Reuben is the oldest. So then they went to go trick their father, killed a goat, put the blood on a tunic, gave it to Jacob, asking if he knows whether or not it's his son's tunic, which obviously he did. He recognized it, assumed the wild beast had devoured him, tore his clothes, put sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. His sons and daughters tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, I will go down into the grave to my son in mourning. Thus his father wept for him. The Midianites had sold Joseph into Egypt. To Potiphar, of course, is where he ended up. And Potiphar was an officer of Pharaoh and a captain of the guard. And Joseph's story shall continue. What we're looking at here is the issue of dress, that basically this idea can infect people of a self-justified killing. And it is an attitude that addresses our people even to this day. There are many times that people have taken an approach and they will use an event that was bad, such in this situation, the situation of Dinah, and they used it as an opportunity to kill and to seize treasure and captives for themselves. So they certainly did grow in wealth and benefited. In the same instance here with Joseph, we see they are quick to want to kill him, with the exception of Reuben, and that this would also remove this jealousy that had occurred, not taking into consideration all the grief that Jacob was having to endure. And so we want to take into our faith and consider that we're not being misled by emotional situations, even situations that are bad, that will cause us to do more bad. And we certainly do not want to use God's establishments as a means for doing evil, even if there is self-gain. These are warnings for us that we want to stay in line with the grace afforded by God, and this grace is going to be shown through Joseph, as he was chosen to show grace to his brothers that would be coming in the future, but there is still yet more that Joseph shall go through. So may we also hold to the Lord in respect of endurance, and trusting the Lord, and holding to our faith even through the hard things that we may go through, which will further strengthen us in our resolution of faith. Let us not be infected by anything of the world that would try to self-justify evil actions or put personal gain as an additive to doing something wrong, and then seek to justify that by taking God's plans and using them in the wrong way. God, of course, is greater than all of this, knew this would occur, and had already established the plan for what Joseph would do. However, we cannot justify the actions of his brothers. They were wrong in how they handled these situations, and there was a great deal of grief surrounding it. So let us focus on the Lord in love and mercy. We will experience bad things that may happen, but let us not return evil for evil, but let us rather seek the Lord in blessing and strength and comfort for his plan for our lives, and trust that even if we must endure, he still is in control and there is still a purpose. We will wait upon the Lord, and we shall see his plan fulfilled, and we shall rejoice. May you be blessed. May you stay sober and vigilant, and be on guard against the enemy, who is as a lion seeking whom to devour. Let us not be misled. Let us not be deceived by a serpent. Let us always take all things to the Lord and seek to remain in his will of God's love. You are loved.